Hey everyone, welcome to our weekly webcast, our financial superfood webcast. We're trying a different format here today. Nick and I wanted to be closer together instead of being in opposite rooms, so we're trying this out. But today, the topic we put up for this today was, money is relative and life is relative, and what we're trying to talk about is figuring out how people make decisions regarding things in their life, especially with money, and all these things tie in together, whether it's how you view your political views, your views on money, your views on religion, right? A lot of these things that people have their personal views and personal values on, they make decisions based on the lens through which they see these decisions. We're going to focus definitely more on the money aspect, but you might reference coming back to other things along the way, such as politics that people look at when they're making decisions.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason that we kind of came up with today's conversation or our discussion that we wanted to come up with is that we were talking about performance the other day and how it's kind of like a relative thing, right?
Like investment performance.
Yeah, investment performance, right. And so if somebody says, or we've had times where we've had a client, we say, this year you made 10%, and maybe the person says, okay, what does that mean, right? And then at other times we say, well, you made 5%, and they're either really happy with it or they're unhappy with it, but they don't know what are they basing that benchmark on.
Right.
So it's like, it's really relative, because what is it that they're comparing that to, and whatever they're comparing it to is really what makes it good or bad, right? It's not
Sure.
It's not necessarily the investments themselves, it's how it's perceived by the end consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, same thing, right? If you give, like what you're saying is, if someone comes in and talks to us about investment performance and we say, so last year you made 10%, and we have client A and client B, and they both made 10%. Client A may say, oh, that's really good. I'm really happy. That was great. And client B may go, that's it?
Right.
That's all I made was 10%. And so again, if you don't know where someone's baseline is starting out, it's difficult to see, again, what lens they're viewing that from, right? Or what maybe do they have some misinformation on which they're basing their decision on, right? The person that thinks, well, I only made, say, a 10% return, in essence, of everything we know, that's pretty good, right? I think almost anyone would be happy with that if they knew all the information. So if I hear that from someone, I want to know, well, why do you think that that's a bad thing, right? Why are you disappointed by that? What were your expectations? And maybe we failed as advisors if that's what they're maybe expecting more, right? Maybe we didn't set the right expectation. So we need to understand what the client's baseline is and what their expectations are, because again, it's relative, right? And again, the client that, does get a good rate of return, and maybe all that they have been used to was investing in, say, CDs or money markets, or leaving their money in cash, very safe investments. And now they're making money. They go, oh, wow, this is really good, right? So you have to understand where your baseline is when you're basically forming opinions about whatever it is, right? Especially with money, right? Again, we could take the same example is you could give someone $100,000 and say, your net worth is $100,000. Again, person A might view that as, wow, $100,000, this is great. This relieves so much anxiety for me. I can pay off credit card bills. I can maybe put a down payment on a house. That's really life-changing. Whereas then you say $100,000 the next client, maybe that's a wealthy person that owns a business, and that's a drop in the bucket. Maybe they spend $100,000 on a car, right? It's just another transaction for them. So you have to understand when you're forming opinions about whether something is good or bad, or beats expectations or misses expectations, what is your baseline for assessing those decisions?
Yeah, and I think a really important point there too is that everybody is so different, right? So no one person is either right or wrong at any given time. They're just different, right? So, client A is a millionaire, right? And client B is you kind of just middle class, normal guy. And like your example is, give each 100,000, they're going to perceive that very differently. But then what I was thinking is, even maybe more importantly, especially in investing and with money, your situation is so much different than anybody else's situation. So if we're sitting and talking with a client, say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you got 10% this year. Isn't that great? And they say, well, I don't know, Jim down the street, for example, got 25%. Yeah, but what's Jim doing, right? Is Jim a stock picker and he got lucky this year? Maybe.
Right.
And so it's all relative. It's
right.
all your perception, because if Jim picked Apple or whatever you want to choose and had a great year, then yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to beat that, right?
Right.
But if Jim does that same thing and blows up his whole thing, and we say, hey, this year we got you 5%, and Jim says, oh man, you guys got 5%, I lost 30%.
Right.
So it's all kind of up in the air. It's all, everybody's situation is very different.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too that we see is, it's, again, I think where people are assessing what is maybe going on in their lives is also relative to the people that's going on around them. So like you said, in that case is if I'm in a dinner and I'm a, client and I'm talking about, we ended up talking about money and investments, and I go, well, so-and-so with my guy that happened this year, and like you said, I made 10% of this guy, and Jim, your buddy, goes, man, no, 10%, I made 20 or 30%. Right. First off, how do you even know he's telling the truth? Right?
That's true.
How do you know that he knows what he's talking about? And why should you even care about what Jim did or not?
Right.
What is happening in Jim's life have any effect on what's happening in your life, right? What you should be focused on is doing what's best for you and your family, and making the best decision for you guys based on your circumstance, your expectations, where you need to get. Right. Whatever happens to people around you, people do this all the time, right? It's the keeping up with the Joneses, right? Why do we care what our neighbors do? Why do we care what cars they drive? Why do we care what their house looks like? Why do we care where their kids go to school? And then why do we influence, and why does that influence the decisions that we make as individuals, when that information that they're projecting may either be false, it might be inflated, it might be misleading, but yet we internalize this information and try to base our lives on what this is, right? We're always, again, this idea of everything is relative, right? Well, where is the baseline that we're drawing to being evaluating these things, this information that we're taking in as people?
Yeah. I listened to this talk here in town one time, and the person was talking about, all of us as humans, we see these like business owners, or we see these things that to us are super impressive. The baseline of the talk was, it's all made up. It's all made up. They're just humans. It's just part of life. It's just like, it's all relative, right? And so it's the same thing with this. It's like, okay, so that person has that house. Who cares? That's made up. Your house is your house, and your lifestyle is your lifestyle. That made up idea or the way you view things shouldn't be based on anybody else's perception.
Right.
It's your perception, because if you lived in a neighborhood with $100,000 homes, great, you're going to be happy in that same neighborhood. But if you go from that and you move into a neighborhood with $1 million homes, then all of a sudden you're going to want $1 million home.
Right.
But you can be happy in either scenario, right? So again, it's just going back to that relativity and that perception.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what we're really trying to get at here is just to understand that, the decisions that we make in our lives, and I think this really ties into money as much as anything, but we have to be careful of how we are interpreting the information that is coming to us, right? The idea that, if I hear a thing from friends or family and I internalize that and say, now I'm maybe not living up to that, or maybe I need to readjust my expectation. Instead of just assuming that what you're hearing is true, instead of just assuming that you need to do whatever it is that person is doing, I think that's the skill set to be able to back off from that and go, do I even care?
Right.
Does this affect me? Is this something that I should take into consideration, that I should make decisions on based on my life? And probably the answer the majority of the time is probably going to be not, right? Because how should you be making decisions, especially when it comes to your money? At the end of the day, you should be making the decision that's going to benefit you, right? That's going to benefit you and the people directly around you, your family, your spouse, your kids, people, if you're running a business, how that affects your employees, whatever it is, right? People that are directed by to make those decisions for the better. That's what we're doing, not compared to what someone else is doing, right? People really get into a difficult position when they look at it. And we see this firsthand in practice, right? We see it with money, right? Because people have this idea that it's a horse race. And if so-and-so is beating me, well, then I need to keep up with them. But why? Why do I need to give? Maybe that they're winning, but they're winning on the short term. And maybe that short term is going to be detrimental long term, whereas maybe the path that you're on is a much more sustainable, realistic path. Right. But yet, if you change your course or trajectory, you're going on a more dangerous path.
Right.
You got to be able to think about those things and how they're going to affect you, right? And is this going to be the best thing for me?
Right. Well, and so again, you said that this person in their eyes is winning versus they're not winning. So then they go off on this different trajectory. But again, it's relative, right? What is winning to you? What is success to you? So if your success is, I don't know, X in your investments, then just stick to it. And who cares? Who cares what whoever else is doing? Because winning to you should be what you internalize in your goals, in your family, with your kids, your wife, all that stuff. That's winning. Who cares about that? Because like you said, that'll throw you off every single time.
And winning can be a thing, as when we see a lot, is winning could be something as someone just being able to start saving maybe $100, $200 a month, right? Maybe they've never been able to even be in that position, but they've worked hard to maybe limit their expenses, pay down debts, and now they're actually able to start saving some money. Right. That can be a really big win for some people. And it's not saving tens of thousands of dollars a month, right? Or it's not going to put them on a path to going out and buying some expensive car or whatever. But that's not the point, right? The point is saving that $100 or $200 a month, putting you on a trajectory that's going to put you in a better position long term, right? Building good habits, building things that are benefiting you personally, irregardless of what people are doing around you.
Right. Well, it comes down to that, right? Just making smart financial decisions. If you're doing that, you're winning, right? You're winning in your own way, but you're winning if you're making those smart decisions.
Exactly. And it only matters if you're doing it for yourself, right? It doesn't matter if you're doing it for someone else. It matters that you're doing it for you. So.
And your smart financial decision could be very different from your neighbor's smart financial decision. So.
Absolutely. All right, we'll end on that.
Yeah.
Don't listen to your neighbor. All right. Peace out.
Peace.